Hey there, Cybercrime Junkies. Got a question that keeps you up at night, or ever wish you could hear from a specific guest, or have a true cybercrime story you want us to investigate? You can now text our studio directly at 904-867-4466. Don't be a stranger. Text us at 904-867-4466. Don't miss the chance to be part of the conversation. Text us direct at 904-867-4466.
The way to grow a brand in business has certainly changed over the years. Not only are there seed funding and pitch decks and financial risk, but so many startups miss the critical juncture of bolstering cybersecurity layers to protect the very brand that they're trying to grow. While money doesn't certainly grow on trees, understanding how cybersecurity relates to business is critical. One of the most impactful things people can do to prepare for a day of tragedy are game time scenarios, war games. Every successful team in every sport on the planet, every competitive athlete, every intellectual leader, public speaker, and captain of industry understands the critical role of practice. We even learned about practicing war games as a child. Back in school, whatever country you grew up in, we all used to have fire drills. Why? Because obviously children die if they don't get out of a building when there's a fire. The smoke, the building collapses, the related electrical dangers can arise unexpectedly in a moment, in a rush, in urgency, in any part of the building during a fire. If a child turns left down a hallway instead of turning right, it could mean the end of their life. So we run fire drills. We practice a real-life scenario so that on the day of a tragedy, children get out alive. Yet we blindly fly the plane of a new brand without any practicing for the day of a tragedy. Is it arrogance? Is it ego? Is it poor counsel and advice? Is it the cybersecurity community and vendors, their inability to translate the importance into business terms? Or is it all of the above? Today, we have somebody that is a phenomenal story you can get a lot out of. Lester Chang joins us in the studio. He's a cybersecurity leader in Canada, but he didn't start in cybersecurity, and he's not from Canada. In fact, he was in the Singapore Army, moved to Canada, knowing only 3 other people in North America at the time. He had no social media presence, no LinkedIn presence, no business experience, and had been involved in tactical warfare and war games for over a decade with the Singapore Navy. He had cybersecurity experience and cybersecurity degrees and certifications from nowhere. Yet today, within just a few short years after arriving in a strange country, he's obtained his CISSP, one of the top credentials in cybersecurity, has amassed a social media following through LinkedIn engagement and simply sharing his story. And he's served in cybersecurity leadership for top financial institutions. His focus has always been targeted. It's always been about bolstering operational resilience. Now, those are great buzzwords, right? What do they mean? Understanding how cybersecurity relates to business is critical. Knowing how to use war games in business is as important as running fire drills for children. This is the story of Lester Chang and the art of how to use war games in business. Come join us as we dive deeper behind the scenes of security and cybercrime today, interviewing top technology leaders from around the world and sharing true cybercrime stories to raise awareness. From the creators of Vigilance, the newest global technology newsletter, translating cyber news into business language we all understand. So please help us keep this going by subscribing for free to our YouTube channel and downloading our podcast episodes on Apple and Spotify so we can continue to bring you more of what matters. This is Cybercrime Junkies, and now the show. Well, welcome everybody to Cybercrime Junkies. I'm your host, David Morrow, and in the studio today is Lester Chang. Lester, welcome, sir. Really excited about having you.
Hi, David. Always happy to be here. Hope you're doing well. And the weather's warming up here in Canada, so happy to be speaking to you this morning.
Always a pleasure to talk to any of our friends up north. Always. So for people that may not be familiar with you, tell us a little bit about your background. I mean, you have a really good story. How you came from the Singapore Army, you moved to Canada, a brand new country, out of the blue, and you created this phenomenal cybersecurity career. Can you just give everybody a little bit of your background story?
Yeah, sure. So like you mentioned, I came from Singapore. I spent 12 years in the Navy as a naval officer, specializing in training, simulation. Some of the highlights there, I ran the Wargaming and Simulation Center for the Navy. Nothing to do with cyber, training purely on naval warfare using simulation and a lot of exercising, drilling the teams on the intricacies of naval warfare. So that was the bulk of my career in the Navy. And like you mentioned, moved over to Canada, coming 6 years now. I knew 3 people when I came to Canada: my wife, her sister's husband. That's about it for my professional network in Canada 6 years ago.
That's unbelievable. I mean, and I think the experience you have with war games too. I mean, granted, at that time it wasn't about cybersecurity, right? But it was about war games. Yeah. And how has that translated into your cybersecurity career? And then I want to touch on how you grew your network, because you have a remarkable story on both of those fronts. Let's talk about the war games first.
Sure. Yeah. So I think war games is in the military, we take it very seriously, of course, because if you're not in operations, then you are exercising or training for it. And I think one thing the military does very well is to plan and overplan, which in itself is a useful exercise to understand your limits, capabilities, your options, your resources, who do you need to call upon, who do you have available to help, who are your allies or at least neutral parties. So the wargaming aspect of it is important to understand even just the landscape or theater of war or theater of operations that you're heading into. And I think that's something that has translated. And we can see in cyber operations, a lot of the concepts, theories, defense in depth, operating in a SOC operation center. A lot of it, I believe, is borrowed from the military in what essentially is a cyber war. So I think that has helped me articulate, I think, in 2 ways. One, the value I bring in my experience. And secondly, I think at the operational conceptual level, how organizations can set up to unfortunately be well prepared for what's an inevitable battle in this long drawn war that we see panning out.
Absolutely. Yeah. We talk about it every day on this podcast. You really focus a lot on building operational resilience, right? Like in through the war games, in the cybersecurity realm or in business, right? What are some of the examples of ways that people can take that war game mentality and leverage it? I mean, you've written a really good book, like the Essential Cybersecurity Exercise Playbook. Let's break into that. But first, let's back up just a second. I want to ask you about when you first moved to Canada and you had a network of 3 people.
Yeah.
Okay. This is a good story for people to realize the power of LinkedIn, the power of networking. Walk us through when you first moved to Canada, what was your LinkedIn profile like? What was your LinkedIn connections like?
I had no LinkedIn when I moved to Canada. To be frank, I had no resume, right? I was fresh out of the Navy, fresh off the boat.
Complete military transition, right? Yeah.
fresh off the boat into Canada as well. Yeah. Pun intended. Yeah. But yeah, no corporate experience, no resume done. The last interview I did was probably when I was 18, entering the military. 1 or 2 internal interviews for appointments within the Navy. But besides that, I had no idea what a resume was. No idea what challenges I was about to face in corporate America, and just even networking. right? It's
Yeah.
almost a foreign concept to me. In the military, we understood diplomatic arrangements, having relationships with allies, potential adversaries, and all. But it's a whole different ball game here, and
Got it.
that was a huge mental shift of understanding. Yeah, and I think I took it upon myself like I saw it as a mission, right? I needed to accomplish certain objectives. Understanding what the scenario, what the landscape is in corporate America, I think that took me a while to even understand. And to be frank, I'm still learning. I'm still learning on this journey.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like you mentioned, I only started being a bit more active on LinkedIn 3 or 4 years into my corporate career. I still it didn't click for me at that point in time, because I brought with me, and in fact, that's what everyone does. They bring along what has worked previously for them, and they just try and translate that into a new environment. So for me, whatever Singapore taught me, whatever the Navy taught me in terms of what helps you progress, helps you succeed, whether it's hard work, heads down, just get your job done and you'll be rewarded. A lot of that, military, especially military in Singapore, that was my approach, my mindset, how I was brought up. And then when I came here, I mean, hard work still is important and all, but I needed to get my head up a bit more, rather than just focus on pure delivery excellence.
Yeah, and you really did. For those that aren't familiar with Lester, please connect with them on LinkedIn. If you're even able to accept any more connections, you're at like close to 40,000 already, and I've just seen it grow just within the last year and a half, 2 years. It's just phenomenal. The content, the stories that you share, the work that you're doing with various groups. It's really, really helpful for the platform and for the cybersecurity community. So keep it up, man. Great stuff. Absolutely. So you have this book that you've developed, and it is the Essential Cybersecurity Exercise Playbook. Really, really practical guide. Very good. It's really well written, honestly. Walk us through kind of what's the central theme, focus of the book, and kind of what key messages or insights do you hope readers will take away from it?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Imagine setting yourself apart from the competition because your organization is always secure, always available, and always ahead of the curve. That's NetGain Technologies, your total one source for cybersecurity, IT support, and technology planning. Picture picking up the phone and having decades of technology and cybersecurity expertise on the other end, like a bat phone, but with a team of specialists ready to make your business faster, easier, and more profitable. Since 1984, NetGain Technologies has designed, built, and implemented customized technology solutions for businesses of all kinds. They offer a clear roadmap and security plan to keep threats at bay, all at a predictable, affordable monthly cost. NetGain Technologies supports organizations across the United States, providing the benefits of a fully staffed in-house IT department and security team at a fraction of the cost. Get peace of mind. Get competitive. Get NetGain. Contact NetGain today at 844-777-6278 or reach out online at netgainit.com. That's netgainit.com and get ahead of your competition today.
Yeah, I think it started off as a way to. So if I didn't start writing on LinkedIn or posting on LinkedIn, I would have never written this book. So that was the foundational piece to me having this idea of producing this book. So I think the initial, the premise of the book is really take all the experience I have in naval wargaming, in running exercises, cyber tabletop exercises, live exercises, and distill it in a one-stop playbook where you have never run an exercise before, you have run, but you want to know how to get better at it, or you want a bit more, a deeper dive into, okay, what are some of the risks in a live cyber exercise? I try to capture wherever the reader is along their journey in understanding cybersecurity exercises, whether you have no plan at all at this point, or you are looking to run a full life exercise. The book touches, like you mentioned, immediately actionable antidotes and tips on how to execute it immediately. And it's something that even currently, I still refer to my own book. I mean, it sounds, sounds
it's
weird.
a good practical guide. I mean, I've actually pulled it out in the past. I've pulled it up and shown people. I'm like, here's the steps. Like, here's how you make it really effective. It's very good. And so that people understand, you came from no cybersecurity background, but you had that naval war game experience. And then you went and you took the CISSP and became a CISSP.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
So,
and then you used to run these for large banking institutions and things.
Yeah, so it was a huge learning curve to understand, security and cybersecurity. But I think it was important to understand that cybersecurity response, especially, is going to take more than just the security and IT team. And I think that's the area where I operate in. Not so much on your, I do help the SOC teams run certain drills, but I think it's more important to sort of elevate that conversation fairly quickly. Because
why are these so important for organizations? Like, why is it so important to run these war games, to run these simulations? I mean, we talk about it all the time, but I want to hear it from you.
Yeah. So I think why it's useful and important, I think no matter where or how mature your organization is in your cybersecurity journey and maturity, I think there's always a place for exercises to play a pivotal role. So yeah, whether you have no plan, no, everything's outsourced to your MSSP, everything's on the cloud, whatever, you have minimal infrastructure, like a lot of new companies are operating that way, which is fine and perfectly sensible to structure that way.
When configured right, it's great, right?
Yeah, when configured.
That's the key.
But the problem is you can't outsource responsibility. You can't outsource response. You can't outsource.
You can't outsource your reputation.
Yeah, and accountability to your partners, clients, customers. I think that's something that is you have to bear that responsibility, and hence, regardless of your infrastructure, maturity, setup, on-prem, off-prem, exercises will tell you immediately where some of the gaps are, where you may have to pay attention to, and understand. It'll bring up a lot of questions about who's doing what. A lot of assumptions will get dug up, and you realize, okay, you better pay some rigor into it so that, touch wood, when it does happen, you won't spend the first 3-4 hours scrambling to look through your contracts, look through your SLAs. There's really no time for that. Yeah.
Well, and there's a difference, there's a difference in severity of data breaches, right? Based on how much an organization has built up their operational resilience. Is that fair?
Yeah.
I mean, the more resilient you are, the more you practice, the more you run these fire drills, the more prepared you are at stemming the flow of a systemic breach, and you can, reduce the risk accordingly.
I think even knowing your options, knowing some of the prerequisites to activating an option. For example, if you want to recover your backup, it's not just a switch of the button, right? There are teams that needs to be involved. There's probably testing. There's probably some security checks before you fail over. If your DR, your disaster recovery BCP plans covers that robustly with due considerations for cybersecurity, then maybe you can get away with flicking a switch. But we all know that there are there's certain improvements to most disaster recovery and BCP plans. There are unique security concerns regarding whether a backup is clean, whether the option to move to another site, whether it's even a viable option. And yes, there are a lot of new products there that help sort of safeguard your crown jewels, the most important data and applications that you have. You can test it and you can onboard all these programs, but there are a lot of assumptions made from a security point of view on how that is going to happen.
Right. And those get addressed through these simulations.
Yeah. And I think it's a good opportunity to have a platform for people to ask difficult questions, for your security team to work together with a lot of the application database teams. Most of them have never met. Just think through a onboarding of a new database. The touch point is probably a security questionnaire that somebody filled up. One of your analysts maybe sent into a project meeting and said, yeah, it makes sense from a security architecture point of view. But from a response...
But there's other stakeholders involved. And by running a simulation, you show how it affects all the different departments or all the different organizations. And in smaller organizations, people wear multiple hats, right? Yeah. One person is the department for certain aspects in smaller organizations.
Yeah. And yeah, but I think regardless, obviously the larger, the more complex, more beneficial the exercise. I don't know. I think it benefits both large and small organizations in the similar way, because the roles and responsibilities are the same. It's just split up by the number of people, like you mentioned, wear different hats. So it's important to think of it another way.
Yeah. Who's the intended audience for your book? Is it just the technical group? It's not really. It's really the business owners or the people in leadership as well, isn't it?
So when I wrote the book, I think it was for two large groups of people. One is for organizations that want to run their exercises in-house, right, internally. So maybe it's your operational resilience team, your risk team, your head of SOC. If you have a crisis management team, those are the direct users of that book. And then the other group is essentially service providers, like if you're MSSPs. You want a lot of the insurance brokers also have their own in-house tabletop exercise services as part of their onboarding or with their breach response services. Yeah, so I think those were the two key audience. The end goal was really the same, to help people have information to be able to run exercises to increase the resiliency of their response.
Absolutely. So let me ask you this. Since you started running them in your early aspect of your career in cybersecurity to where you are now, and to where you were when you wrote the book, how has the security landscape changed? Like, to me or to people on the business end of it, right, dealing with decision makers, it seems like the threats are much more common. They're much more severe. They tend to be much more targeted, much more visceral, and all the more need to practice these war games.
Yeah, I think the day-to-day news helps the awareness piece of the risk. So there's not as much selling. There's not much need for selling the the value proposition of exercises, and not just from a cyber point of view. Just think about the last three to four years, geopolitical, health or epidemics. There was a lot of change and a lot of uncertainty that sort of lend its weight to the need for exercising and being prepared to respond. So whether it's like pure cyber attacks, that has been fairly common as well, unfortunately. But the whole mindset about the world has been fairly choppy over the last 3 to 4 years. This year is going to be choppy as well. Whether it's elections, we still have ongoing kinetic action in certain regions. We have the onboarding or the onslaught of AI tools that people are still figuring how that is going to impact. All that is just exacerbates the rate of change. And
it seems to speed it up, doesn't it? I mean, what's your impression on how just even generative AI, not even the advanced machine learning and those capabilities for coding and things, but just generative AI has seemed to really impact social engineering, and the access is coming faster, all the more reason to practice these tabletop exercises and to build out a living, breathing incident response plan. Is that what you're seeing as well?
Yeah, I think that I think it's inevitable that with higher capabilities, whatever was happening before would just happen more often and in larger scale. Like back to your point, if we don't get prepared today, what makes us, what gives us comfort that we'll be more prepared tomorrow? No, it's not going to happen. So until you put in time, resources to spend some time really thoroughly looking at your plans, having those difficult conversations with your key stakeholders, bringing in external partners to really understand, okay, if this were to happen tomorrow, what capabilities do you bring to bear? Or is it all just talk and it's on the paper, but you can't execute? You need some offshore resources to execute it in I don't know, off office hours, and we got to wait for them to come on board. All these conversations are to be had before anything happens.
Absolutely. So let me ask you this. Given the interconnected relationship between cybersecurity threats and national security, organizations, brand, reputation, ways to protect it, how important is information sharing within the cybersecurity community, within business leaders and the cybersecurity community? You touch on it often in your posts. I'm just curious to get your insight on it.
Yeah, I think that is if that was absent, then we would have no chance, right? Yeah. Because we are essentially isolated organizations with no ability to collaborate, to share, and to hopefully get a preemptive warning about something happening. And it'll be easy pickings for whoever's the threat actors, and just take targets one by one.
Yeah. I mean, it's good to know how Lockbit and Black Hat are coming after people, right? In organizations, because then when you receive information from them or demands from them, you have some baseline of realizing who these people are, what their modus operandi is, and how they function, right?
Yeah. And I think we've come to a point where you can't play dumb anymore, right? You can't say, right. I don't know what the risks are, who are the threat actors. It's frontline news. And I think it is corporate responsibility to your shareholders and your partners, clients, customers to do the best you can. Of course, there's no 100% protection, but to be embedded in some of this information sharing communities, getting best practices, understanding from previous victims may not be able to share that much, but there's really so much information out there on what their experiences are like, what they have done that helped them during a response.
Yeah. Would you agree? There's still lessons to learn in all of these stories. Like, even though you may not know the intricate details of even, say, some of the more popularized ones or publicized ones, like the MGM breach or the Caesars breach, you do realize it really heightened the element of social engineering and the research that they do ahead of time. And it helps train help desks when they're helping people and dealing with MFA. There's a lot of different lessons to be learned there, and to draw attention to areas that you may want to focus on, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a lot of that, on hindsight, it's always easy to see. Right?
Oh, yeah,
but there are probably a lot of small indicators, not from a technical point of view. Those, if you don't have the tools, you don't have any alerts, right? And a lot of these smaller companies, they just don't have any
visibility. Yeah, they have no insight, right?
But like you mentioned, from a social engineering, I think there are clues there. Like there was the latest huge fraud, was it in Hong Kong with a MNC company? Just inviting employees in, having a deep fake video, telling them to transfer money, and no one questioned, and they just transferred, I don't know, was it $30-40 million?
Yeah, it was from the CFO, it was allegedly from the CFO. So what you're referencing is the deepfake video where the CFO sent emails, phishing emails, business email, compromise emails, asking for funds to be transferred, but then got on a video call, had a meeting right? And it wasn't even the CFO. It was a deep fake of it. Yeah. I mean, the FBI here in the US, the FBI issued a warning of deepfake videos used for, to gain access to various companies back in July of 22, actually. People were applying for remote work using deepfake videos. They were being hired on, right? And then we voluntarily would give them access to our systems. And then it wasn't even about hacking. It was more just about, exfiltration of confidential data and just pure fraud, basically. But yeah, it's indicative of a lot of things, right? The advances in machine learning, the advances in AI, social engineering. Deepfake is really seems to be one of the newest and most prevalent threats. And I don't know about you and your experience, but I don't see a lot of companies that have deepfake detection platforms in their budget lines, right? Like, what's our deepfake detection budget for this year? Like, nobody that we're talking to, very few people have actually thought that through. And it's something that's going to be coming now.
Yeah, I think as like AI video generation gets a bit more sophisticated. Right now, you can still tell. And if you pay a bit of attention, you can still tell.
Absolutely.
But it's just going to get more and more difficult. And I think the first part of awareness and education for your staff dealing with funds or even client interaction, I think there needs to be follow up, a bit more specific training on what to look out for.
Yep. And in the defense of the people that are socially engineered in these situations, sometimes if they're working from home or they're working wherever there could be spotty internet or spotty Wi-Fi, right? Mm-hmm. You may see a glitch on somebody, right? And you might think, oh, it must be me, right? Mm-hmm. It's probably not them. That's our CFO. It's probably on my end, right? Meanwhile, it's really just the deep fake system just glitching, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just surprised.
It's really scary. I think that is what everybody's afraid of is, how are we going to know, the old adage of seeing is believing. Now that's being drawn into question even.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm just surprised that nobody asked him the question, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's unbelievable. Yeah. We have a couple episodes where we're actually going very deep into deep fake. And we're going to actually have some where we have a guest and a deep fake guest kind of compare the two. And I'm interested to see it. We haven't had the episodes yet. So those are coming up. I'm kind of excited about that because I want to see how good they're getting, because some of the people that we're having on, that they have access to some really good platforms. And it's nerve wracking to think about that. So you've had a wonderful career. What advice can you share for people that want to break into cybersecurity? I know it's a broad question, but you've really come from a very unique and started right off the bat. And you're an inspiration to a lot of people that want to get into the field.
Yeah.
What can you share?
I think the important thing is I came into cybersecurity through a project management angle, which I think a lot of people should look at alternative ways to get into cybersecurity rather than straight up SOC, straight up Intel network security. I think. What
do you mean by you came in through a project management angle? Can you just elaborate on that a little? Because sure. That's really helpful.
Yeah. So I joined as a project analyst or coordinator within a cybersecurity project management office. So that gave me a good overview of all the tools that were being purchased in a huge enterprise transformation. And that was useful for me to understand all the different aspects of cybersecurity, why this tool is needed, how we're going to implement the tool in an enterprise. And that gave me, I guess a good
unique insight. You didn't just go straight through the SOC and the traditional route. That's really good.
Yeah. And I think another way to approach it is look at some of the trends in terms of focus of technologies or domains within cyber. Like IAM is heating up. A lot of people are needing their tools, and that's where the jobs are going to be, right? It's all a cycle.
Can you elaborate on those acronyms? You mean IAM, right?
IAM, yeah, Identity Access Management. I think that's
absolutely.
Yeah. there's so many aspects of cybersecurity to start getting into, and start speaking to people who are in their current roles. Understand how did they get, like, I can't tell you how to get an IAM job. I never did it, but they would have, and you will soon realize that there is no one golden path to that.
Right. That's exactly right. Well, it's a broad, it just gets into defense, and it's a very broad category, and it's being formed as we speak, right? Yeah. I mean, it's really being defined.
Yeah,
go ahead.
There are probably some routes that are more higher probability of success than other routes, for sure. But I think because I don't say it's a new career or industry, but I mean, you compare it to your IT networks, which is it's a much clearer path.
Absolutely.
And because it's a constantly changing, which I see it as a good thing, right?
Absolutely. I do as well.
It's the fear of a lot of people coming into IT, especially, is like, oh, these guys have been at it for the last 30 years. How am I ever gonna learn something to be able to catch up? But I think embrace the rate of change that's coming into not only cyber IT, the entire workforce. If you're able to embrace that, learn faster than anyone else can learn, then the guy with 30 years experience, he doesn't have much on you. He will at the start, obviously, he will always have something on you, but he
want a fresh take, new insight, anything like that is really helpful, right?
And I think I think it somehow leads back into like your own personal brand on LinkedIn, right? If everyone has that mindset that, I don't have anything worthy to share because I don't have 30 years of experience, then it would be crickets out there. Nobody would talk about it.
Well, and it would be a really boring platform, which it's not, right? Because people, I'm amazed that like less than 4% of the people on LinkedIn actually post.
Yeah.
Right? Think of that. I mean, 96% of everybody consumes, right? And so what a great opportunity for people to have their voice heard, to establish their own brand. I mean, you're living proof of it.
Yeah. And I think back to your point of how to get a job on LinkedIn. You gotta put yourself in the hiring manager's shoes. He opens up a SOC position, probably has 1,000 applicants into it. 90% are probably more qualified than you, given the layoffs that we had last year. It's a fool's game to try to play the same route, just applying blindly. Right. Why is it a surprise that you're not getting any traction? There's no surprise. Just do the math, look at the landscape, look at what you're dealing with. There's just no way you're going to get in if you just, unfortunately, do your 4 years, get some certs, do up a resume, and click apply.
Yep. The key is to network. The key is to get to know people, right? And to have a unique perspective on things.
Yeah. And it's going to take time, right? No one's you're not expecting to show up and give your 2 cents worth of or a wildly alternate view about SOC operations and expect it to go viral tomorrow. It's not going to happen. Right. People have been running SOCs for years and years now. Yep. Either they call your bullshit or no one's going to care about what you think or have to say. Unfortunately, it's just, and that's something that you have to learn. People's time are precious. People's time is precious. And if you don't understand that concept and you expect people to pay attention to you just because you did something, then you got a lot to learn, my friend, because that's...
No, absolutely. There's a great book that I recently read. It's called Smart Brevity. And it talks about how business communications, interpersonal communications, online social media communications, there's a formula that actually works, right? Stating your point right up front, addressing the question that is on the audience's mind, right? Like just, and then lay it out right away, and then go into 1 or 2, 3 reasons in a very clear, concise moment, and then just edit it, make it shorter and shorter. Because when you think about when you work at an organization and you get up at the higher levels and you're trying to influence business leaders, right? You can't go there and talk about the events per second of your SIM platform and all. They don't care, right? They need to know about the business impact because that's what they care about. You have to enter their operating reality, point out the benefit of it, right? Point out the data that backs up the point that you're making, and then have your call to action right afterward. And it's, I see you do it, whether you realize that you do it or not, but I see you do it in your LinkedIn posts. I see people like Mike Miller do it, and it's really, really good. It's very, very effective.
Okay.
So as we're wrapping up here, you have an aspect on LinkedIn where it's LinkedIn ghostwriting for cyber CEOs. Walk us through that. What is that about?
Yeah. So it's something that I haven't really talked about much. And I'm
well, you're gonna today. So what is it? What's it about?
So I think there's a huge opportunity for cybersecurity founders, CEOs, in leveraging their LinkedIn profile to drive awareness and eventually business to their product or their company.
Absolutely. And many do not do it. Many do not leverage it.
And yeah, because to be fair, it does take time to figure out this platform, to figure out social media, social selling, brand building, personal branding, marketing, the founder, unfortunately, is like, that's a marketing problem or that's a sales problem.
Right.
But no, it's not. It's a business problem. And who better to lead that charge than the founder or CEO themselves? We have seen a bit more extreme examples like Elon, Mark Zuckerberg, in really where their personal brand is larger than the company. And helps draw attention, whether good or bad attention, doesn't matter, draws attention. And it's something that I believe, one, there's a huge opportunity. Two, no one's doing it. Three, it is something that it's going to take a bit of time to learn, which founders are swamped with whatever they need to do to keep their business afloat and grow business. And therefore, this is something that
ghostwriting for them, helping them do it is key.
Yeah. And I think
that's a really good... That's a good recognition of a void, you know?
And, I bring the perspective of, not many cybersecurity professionals do that. And you can hire a generic ghostwriter, but they probably bug you for the next 20 hours just to figure out what your product is.
They won't even understand it.
Yeah. You have no time to sort of, give them to be able to write in your voice and your understanding your client's points. And I think I'm fortunate enough to come from the enterprise, working with a service provider. I sort of understand both sides of the coin. I wouldn't say I'm a marketing expert, not far from it, but I understand at least how you draw attention, how you start to build certain sort of authority, influence. Again, it all points back to depending what the founder wants out of his time spent. So whether it's pure lead generation, whether it's a bit more authority,
brand awareness, it could be
influence within the cyber community. Yeah, so I think
it's really good.
Because what's the flip side? The flip side is throwing marketing dollars into LinkedIn ad spend, throwing marketing dollars to pay to be on a keynote. I don't to have
ads, run television ads or radio ads or things that you might not be touching the right people anyway, right?
And to pay for conference booths and to be chucked in the corner and nobody even knows you exist. It's a lot of money spent. And I think just if you can portion a bit into investing in your personal brand, again, it's going to take time. It's not I am CEO. Everyone here. No one's going to care about you, unfortunately. But I think there are ways to slowly start to share not just your company, not just your product, who you are, why you started this company, what was your journey like, why do you start a cybersecurity product, what gap do you see, what's the mind and genius behind your company. And I think that helps. Firstly, put a face to your product and your company. It puts some humanity inside, because as the interaction grows with more AI, we're just going to get bombarded by robotic interactions, and you don't want to be faceless in a world that's just going to be dominated by more inputs, generated
absolutely.
Voice, video. Yeah. So I think it's early days. I think LinkedIn's not going to go away.
No, and I think it's really, really important. I mean, I think that establishing that personal brand is so key for all of those elements that you just mentioned. Absolutely. So as we look ahead, what's on the horizon for you? What are you looking to accomplish? What things do you have that are exciting that are upcoming?
So I'm working for a cybersecurity not-for-profit. That's where I'm going to spend most of my time and efforts. I think we have a strong mandate to help shore up Canadians' infrastructure resiliency. So I think that's where I'll be spending most of my time. And
fantastic. We'll have links to that in the show notes. What's the name of the organization?
Organization is called Rogers Cybersecurity Catalyst. So we are associated with one of the large universities, largest communications company, bank, government. So we are well connected, and we are hoping that our position will be able to help a lot of both private and public companies to be firstly aware and then ready for whatever's unfortunately going to come. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Well, that's fantastic. Lester Chang, it is always a pleasure. You've got great insight. You've got a great origin story. It inspires many, and just keep up the great work, man. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time. We will have links to your LinkedIn profile as well as to your book and the LinkedIn ghostwriting, which I thought was a great insight. Well, that wraps this up. Thanks for joining, everybody. Hope you got value out of digging deeper behind the scenes of security and cybercrime today. Please don't forget to help keep this going by subscribing free to our YouTube channel at Cybercrime Junkies Podcast, and download and enjoy all of our past episodes on Apple and Spotify podcasts so we can continue to bring you more of what matters. This is Cybercrime Junkies, and we thank you for joining us.